Let me ask you something powerful. When was the last time you truly looked in the mirror and said, I'm proud of who I'm becoming? Not because everything's perfect, but because you finally decided to take control of your life. Most people don't live. They just survive. They wake up, go through the motions, chase distractions, and call it living. But deep down, there's a voice that whispers, you're meant for more. And you know it. You feel it every single day. That pull inside your heart saying, there's a better version of me waiting. But maybe you've been stuck in doubt. Maybe you've lost focus. Maybe you've forgotten your own worth. Today, that changes. Because this right here, right now, is not just another motivational talk. This is a wake-up call, a reminder that your story isn't over. It's just waiting for a new chapter, the one you decide to write today. Let me tell you something that changed my entire life, and it will change yours too. Where focus goes, energy flows. Most people don't understand how powerful that truth really is. They think success is about luck or talent or being in the right place at the right time, but it's not. It's about what you choose to give your attention to every single day. Because your mind is like a garden. Whatever you plant and water will grow. If you keep feeding it with fear, doubt, and excuses, don't be surprised when your life feels heavy, uncertain, and stuck. But if you start planting thoughts of growth, gratitude, and purpose, your life begins to transform in ways you can't even imagine. Think about it. How many times have you focused on what's wrong instead of what's right? How many times have you spent hours replaying the same mistake, the same rejection, the same painful moment? And the more you thought about it, the bigger it got, right? That's because whatever you focus on expands. Your energy, your emotions, your decisions, they all follow your focus. If you focus on fear, you create more fear. If you focus on possibility, you start to see opportunities everywhere. We live in a world that's constantly fighting for your attention. Every beep, every scroll, every headline, it's designed to steal your focus. And when your focus is scattered, your power is gone. You can't build a masterpiece if your attention is divided among 100 meaningless things. You can't create deep change when your energy is constantly leaking into distractions. Focus is the ultimate form of power. It's the gateway to mastery, to growth, to freedom. When I was young, I used to look at people who were successful and think, what do they have that I don't? And then I realized it wasn't intelligence, it wasn't luck. It was focus. They decided what mattered most, and they gave everything they had to it. They said no to the noise, no to the comfort zone, no to the things that diluted their energy, because you can't live an extraordinary life with average focus. You can't build confidence by focusing on what you lack. You build it by directing your mind toward progress, no matter how small. Let's be honest. Your life right now is a mirror of your focus. If you focus on problems, you live in problems. If you focus on possibilities, you start to feel alive again. It's not about ignoring challenges. It's about choosing the lens through which you see them. The truth is, pain will visit all of us. But suffering is what happens when we give that pain all our focus and energy. You can't change your past, but you can absolutely change what you give your power to today. So ask yourself right now, what have I been focusing on lately? Am I focusing on what I can't control or what I can? Am I focused on who hurt me or on who I'm becoming? Because whatever you decide to focus on, that's what your future will feel like. Your relationships, your energy, your joy, they're all shaped by this invisible force called focus. When you start to direct it intentionally, something shifts inside you. You begin to feel more grounded, more certain, more alive. You stop reacting to life and start creating it. Focus gives you clarity, and clarity gives you confidence. And that confidence fuels momentum. It's a beautiful cycle, one that begins the moment you take command of where your mind goes. You can't build a better life if your mind is busy replaying the old one. You can't create peace while focusing on everything that went wrong. The secret is simple but not easy. Discipline your focus. Start your day by deciding what deserves your energy and what doesn't. Because focus is not just about attention, it's about intention. It's about saying, this is where my power goes. This is what I choose to give life to. The moment you learn to master your focus, you start to master your destiny. Most people go through life waiting for someone else to see their worth before they decide to see it themselves. They chase approval, validation, and recognition, thinking that once they finally get it, they'll feel enough. But here's the truth. If you don't value yourself, nothing and no one will ever be enough to fill that void. The world doesn't give you your value. You set that standard. You decide how you'll be treated, how you'll be spoken to, and how much of yourself you're willing to give away. You see, the way you show up in life tells the world how to treat you. If you constantly put yourself last, if you keep saying yes when your soul is screaming no, if you settle for less because you're afraid of being alone or rejected, you're teaching people that your boundaries are negotiable. And when you make your worth dependent on someone else's acceptance, you hand them the keys to your peace. Let me tell you something powerful. You are not here to prove your worth. You're here to express it. You don't earn your value by what you do, how much you achieve, or how many people like you. You already have it. You were born with it. The problem is you've been conditioned to forget it. Somewhere along the way, you started to believe that being humble meant shrinking yourself, that love meant sacrificing your needs, that success meant pleasing everyone but yourself. But true self-value isn't arrogance. It's alignment. It's saying, I know who I am, I know what I bring, and I refuse to settle for anything that doesn't honor that. Think about this. When you value something precious, what do? You protect it. You care for it. You don't throw it around carelessly or let anyone misuse it. So why don't we do the same for ourselves? You wouldn't let someone scratch your car without saying something, yet you let people scratch your spirit every day with their words, their energy, their disregard. And every time you stay silent, every time you let it slide, you chip away at your own self-respect. Start to recognize your value by how you spend your time and energy. Time is the most valuable currency you have, and who you give it to says everything about how much you value yourself. Stop chasing people who wouldn't walk half the distance you've run for them. Stop over-explaining your worth to those who are committed to misunderstanding you. You don't need their approval. You need your own permission to rise. When you truly value yourself, something magical happens, your energy changes. You stop seeking love and start attracting it. You stop begging for opportunities and start creating them. You start to speak differently, walk differently, make decisions differently, because you no longer come from lack, you come from power, and people can feel that. They can sense when someone knows who they are. Here's the thing, valuing yourself isn't just about self-love, it's about self-leadership. It's about setting a standard for your life that says, I will not shrink to fit someone else's comfort zone. It's about understanding that you can be kind, still have boundaries, you can be humble and still stand tall, you can be loving and still say no. Because every time you compromise your worth to keep someone else comfortable, you betray the part of you that was born to grow. So maybe it's time to stop waiting for someone to finally see your light and start being the one who refuses to dim it. Maybe it's time to stop apologizing for your greatness, your ambition, your uniqueness. You were not meant to blend in. You were meant to stand out and set the tone for how the world interacts with you. You don't attract what you want, you attract who you are. And when you raise your value, when you truly embody it, the world begins to rise to meet your new standard. Because when you finally decide to value yourself, you stop surviving life and start leading it. We live in a world where everyone is busy, yet few people are truly present. You wake up and before your feet even hit the floor, your phone is already in your hand. Notifications, messages, news, noise. It's like your mind gets hijacked before you've even taken your first conscious breath of the day. And then you wonder why you feel tired, anxious, and unfulfilled. It's not that you're broken. It's that you're distracted. You've allowed the noise of the world to drown out the voice of your soul. Distraction has become the new addiction. It promises relief, but it steals clarity. Every scroll, every like, every unnecessary comparison pulls you further away from yourself. You can't hear your intuition when your mind is constantly cluttered with everyone else's opinions. You can't feel peace when your attention is being divided between 100 meaningless things that don't add any real value to your life. And that's the tragedy of our generation. We have access to more information than ever before, yet we've lost connection to ourselves. You see, mental space is sacred. It's the foundation of your focus, your creativity, your energy, your peace. And yet, most people treat it carelessly. They fill it with gossip, negativity, fear, endless noise. And then they wonder why their life feels chaotic. You cannot build a calm, powerful, focused life inside a cluttered mind. You have to learn to protect your mental space the way a warrior protects his sword. Because once it's dull, your power fades. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you sat alone in silence, without music, without a screen, without reaching for distraction? For most people, silence feels uncomfortable because it forces them to meet themselves. But silence is where strength is built. It's in the quiet that clarity begins to form. When you step back from the noise, you start to hear what really matters, your truth, your intuition, your direction. It's easy to say you want to change your life, but how can you transform if your energy is constantly scattered? Focus requires space. It requires saying no, not just to people, but to patterns, habits, and thoughts that drain your energy. You can't move forward if your mind is always tied to what's irrelevant or toxic. Every time you say yes to a distraction, you're saying no to your potential. Start to notice where your attention goes during the day. How many times do you check your phone when you're bored? How many hours do you waste scrolling through someone else's life instead of building your own? How many times do you let negative voices from people, media, or your own doubts occupy your head rent-free? It's time to evict that noise. You have limited mental energy each day, and what you give it to determines the quality of your life. When you begin to take your focus back, something incredible happens. You start to feel your strength returning, you start to think clearer, breathe deeper, and make decisions that actually align with who you want to become. The fog lifts. You realize that the clarity you were searching for was never lost. It was just buried under layers of noise and distraction. You have to become ruthless about protecting your mental state. That doesn't mean isolating yourself from the world. It means being intentional with what you let in. If something doesn't add peace, value, or growth, it doesn't deserve space in your mind, because every thought you allow in is a seed, and those seeds grow into your emotions, your habits, your results. Choose carefully. When you eliminate distractions, you don't lose anything. You gain yourself back. You gain your presence, your power, your ability to actually live rather than just react. The truth is, transformation doesn't happen in chaos, it happens in clarity. And clarity begins the moment you decide to cut the noise and take back your mind. There's a moment in everyone's life when you realize that thinking, planning, and dreaming aren't enough. You can read every book, listen to every motivational talk, visualize every outcome, but until you take action, nothing changes. Most people are waiting for the perfect moment to begin. They tell themselves, I'll start when I'm ready, Or I'll move forward when I feel confident. But the truth is, you'll never feel fully ready. Confidence doesn't come before action. It comes because of it. Action is what separates those who wish from those who win. It's the bridge between who you are and who you want to become. But taking action isn't just about doing more. It's about doing what matters. You can stay busy all day and still not make progress because activity and productivity are not the same thing. Action with purpose creates momentum and momentum creates power. Once you start moving, life starts responding to you differently. Doors open, ideas flow, energy rises because motion creates emotion. Think about a time when you finally decided to act on something that scared you. Maybe it was starting a project, walking away from something that no longer served you, or having a conversation you'd been avoiding. Remember how the fear felt beforehand? It was heavy, paralyzing. But the moment you acted, even if you stumbled, that fear began to shrink. That's because fear only grows in stillness. The moment you move, it loses control over you. Too many people spend years analyzing their next move instead of making it. They're trapped in what I call the paralysis of perfection. They wait for the stars to align, for the timing to be right, for the guarantee that it will all work out. But life doesn't reward hesitation. Life rewards boldness. It rewards the person who says, I may not know exactly how this will unfold, but I'm willing to take the first step, because every great success story begins with a decision to act before the outcome is certain. Action builds identity. Every time you take a step forward, no matter how small, you're teaching your brain who you are becoming. You're saying, this is the kind of person I am. I follow through. I move forward. I don't wait. And that repetition creates power. Before long, taking action becomes who you are, not just something you do when you feel motivated. You start to build momentum, and momentum is what turns dreams into reality. You don't need a massive leap. You just need movement. One step, one call, one small decision made with courage. Most people underestimate the compound effect of small, consistent actions. They think transformation has to be dramatic, overnight, cinematic, but real change happens in the small, steady choices you make every day. You don't climb a mountain by looking at the peak. You climb it by focusing on the next step in front of you. And yes, you're going to fall. You're going to fail. That's part of it. But failure isn't the opposite of success. It's the pathway to it. Every person who's ever achieved something extraordinary has failed more times than the average person has even tried. The only difference is they didn't quit. They used their mistakes as fuel instead of excuses. They didn't see setbacks as signs to stop, but as feedback, proof that they were in motion, proof that they were alive, proof that they were growing. Stop waiting for clarity before you act, because clarity comes from action, not before it. You'll never discover your strength by thinking about it. You'll find it in the doing. Life doesn't change when you wish for it to. It changes when you take a step. No matter how uncertain, no matter how uncomfortable. Because once you move, the universe starts to move with you. The moment you take bold, decisive action, you shift from being a spectator of your life to being its creator. One of the most powerful truths you'll ever learn is that your environment shapes your destiny. You can have the best intentions, the strongest mindset, the clearest goals. But if you surround yourself with the wrong energy, you'll constantly feel like you're fighting an uphill battle. The people you spend time with are either expanding your vision or shrinking it. They're either feeding your growth or draining your spirit. Energy is contagious, and whether you realize it or not, you're absorbing it every day. Look at your circle. Who are you giving your time, your attention, your emotional space to? Are you surrounded by people who challenge you to rise, who remind you of your power, who hold you accountable to your greatness? Or are you surrounded by people who pull you back into old patterns, who complain more than they create, who tell you to be realistic every time you talk about your dreams? Because no matter how strong you are, if you're constantly surrounded by negativity, it will weigh you down. You can't soar while carrying anchors. There's a quote that says, if you hang around 5 confident people, you'll become the 6th. If you hang around 5 broke people, you'll become the 6th. If you hang around 5 inspired people, you'll become the 6th. That's not just a motivational line, it's neuroscience. Your brain mirrors the energy around you. You unconsciously start to adopt the habits, beliefs, and emotional states of the people you're most connected to. So if you want to elevate your life, start by elevating your environment. Sometimes that means making hard choices. It means distancing yourself from people you love but who don't love your growth. It means saying goodbye to environments that feel comfortable but keep you small. Growth is not always about addition. Sometimes it's about subtraction. The moment you let go of what drains you, you make space for what strengthens you. You cannot invite abundance into a room that's already filled with limitation. You don't have to cut people off with anger or resentment. You can love them, but love them from a distance. You can bless them and still choose peace for yourself, because protecting your energy isn't selfish. It's essential. You can't pour into others from an empty cup. You can't lead, create, or love at your highest level if you're constantly being pulled into chaos. When you surround yourself with energy that elevates you, you start to rise naturally. You think bigger, act bolder, and believe deeper, because the atmosphere around you supports your growth. And here's something important. It's not just about people. Your environment includes the content you consume, the spaces you live in, the conversations you entertain. Everything you allow into your mental and emotional world shapes your mindset. Start choosing inputs that lift you higher. Listen to voices that inspire, Read words that stretch your thinking. Spend time in spaces that give you energy instead of stealing it. Your environment is a mirror of your standards. When you raise your standard for what you allow around you, your life begins to reflect that new level. There will always be people who won't understand your drive, your hunger, your vision, and that's okay. You're not meant to fit into every group. Sometimes the loneliness you feel on your growth journey isn't isolation, it's elevation. It's life pulling you out of environments that can't sustain the person you're becoming. Don't fight that, trust it. Because eventually, when you stay true to your growth, you attract your tribe, people who see your light, not your limits. People who don't compete with you, but complete your circle. Be intentional about who gets access to you. Your energy is your currency, and not everyone deserves to spend it. The more you align yourself with people who uplift you, the more unstoppable you become. Because when you surround yourself with energy that elevates you, your whole life starts to rise with it. Every single one of us has said the same words at some point in our lives. Someday I'll change. Someday I'll start that business. Someday I'll work on my body. Someday I'll leave that toxic relationship. Someday I'll go after my dream. But here's the truth. Someday isn't a day on the calendar. It's an excuse that disguises fear. It's a comfortable illusion that convinces you there's always more time, when in reality, time is the one thing you can never get back. Transformation doesn't wait for perfect timing. It begins the moment you decide that waiting is no longer an option. You don't need a new year, a new plan, or a sign from the universe. You need a decision, a real decision. Because when you truly decide, you cut off any other possibility except progress. And that's when your life begins to shift. Most people don't lack potential, they lack commitment. They live their lives almost starting. They stand at the edge of change, looking at what could be, but never stepping forward because they're afraid to fail, afraid to lose, afraid to look foolish. But the truth is, life will pass you by while you're waiting for certainty. If you're waiting to feel ready before you act, you'll be waiting forever. Readiness doesn't come before transformation. It comes because of it. You see, every single day you delay your growth, your power fades a little. Every day you say tomorrow, you strengthen the habit of hesitation. And that hesitation becomes a cage. You start to convince yourself that where you are is good enough, even when your soul is begging for more. The pain of staying the same will eventually outweigh the fear of change. But why wait until that moment? Why wait until life forces you to move when you could choose to move now? Change isn't comfortable. It's messy. It's uncertain. It will challenge everything familiar about you. But it's in that discomfort that transformation happens. You have to be willing to let go of who you've been in order to become who you're meant to be. Most people want change without sacrifice. They want progress without pain, growth without letting go. But that's not how transformation works. Every breakthrough demands that you release something, an old belief, an old habit, an old version of yourself that's no longer serving you. There's a moment in life when you realize that no one is coming to save you. Not your family, not your friends, not some miracle down the road. The responsibility is yours. And that's not something to fear. That's something to celebrate. Because the moment you take ownership of your life, you take back your power to change it. You stop waiting for external permission and start living from internal conviction. You already have everything you need to begin. The answers you're looking for won't come from outside. They'll come from within once you decide to act. It's not about knowing the whole path. It's about taking the first step. The path reveals itself through movement. The more you act, the clearer it becomes. And the more you hesitate, the foggier it gets. Action brings clarity. Imagine if you treated today like the most important day of your life, because it is. Today is the only day that exists. Yesterday is memory, tomorrow is imagination. What you do with this moment determines the direction of your entire future. Stop saying on day and start saying day one. That's how transformation begins, not with a plan, but with a decision. You are one decision away from a completely different life.